Morning, good morning. Let's go ahead and move this down here. Hey, thank you guys for joining me this morning. Hey, how are you guys doing? Thank you so much for joining me. I wanted to share some thoughts on some of the happenings that I'm seeing going on in this country, United States. The violence that we continue to see take place in our schools and our communities. This is not just a problem of hey, greetings. This is not just a problem of schools. This is not just a problem that we're seeing in our local communities. It's nationwide. And I wanted to talk to you about why instituting more laws, more rules, more regulations are not going to stop the violence that is so pervasive in our society. It's not going to stop it. We have seen mass shooting in school this week. There was a mass shooting last week. There have been mass shootings happening for years in the United States. So what's going on here that we're seeing this stuff? What's happening? And we hear the same speeches time and time again from our political representatives, and that what we need is we just need more gun laws, more regulations. We have more background checks that's going to solve the problem. If we do this, that, and the other, it's going to solve the problem. And obviously, we have done those things. We have done those things, and it has not worked. We have more restrictions in the United States of America when it comes to gun laws and gun policies than ever. And yet and still, hey, how you doing, Rosemary? We have more laws in the United States restricting access to weapons now than we did 50 years ago. So why is it, how you doing, Terry? So why is it that we're seeing more mass shootings and acts of violence now with more regulations than we did 50 years ago? Oh, thank you. It is absolutely beautiful out here. I'm hoping that it's going to stay a beautiful day and I may be able to do a little bit of grilling. Hey, how you doing, Derek? Why is it that we're seeing more acts of mass violence, mass shootings than ever? I don't know if you guys remember. I don't know if you ever remember seeing that old movie, The Christmas Story. Really popular Christmas movie, and the kid in the movie wants to get a Red Ranger gun, so he goes and he orders a Red Ranger gun online. That's what he wants for Christmas. So he can order that online. No background checks, none of that. And it wasn't frowned upon. And no one was concerned about mass shootings happening. No one was concerned about, if I go to school, am I going to be safe? People weren't concerned about those things. It's something to think about. This is not a video about gun control, but it's really a video about the heart of what has happened to this country. I shared this story in a video some years ago, but a really good friend of mine really opened my eyes up to a lot of things. I grew up in New York. I was raised in New York, and metropolitan area, metropolitan community, and we didn't see, as many people legally owning firearms as there are here in Ohio. And so when I moved here, it was really a pretty much a foreign concept to me about what was going on. I didn't really understand the culture behind weapons, owning weapons for, particularly for sport. And so we started seeing a rash of shootings occurring. How you doing, Joni? We began to see a rash of shootings occurring in the country at that time. And so he said something to me that was really interesting that I took to heart. He talked about when he was a kid and when he went to school, and he grew up in a rural community. And he says to me, he says, Joe, I don't understand what's going on here. He said, when we were kids, he said everyone had a I'm glad that you're doing something productive, Joni. It's better than sitting around the house. So working a lot is good. So he says, Joe, we went to school. Everybody had a gun in the back of their car. I said, we all did. He said, we'd pull up at the school. He said, we all pull up at the school. This is obviously 40, 50 years ago. And he said, and everyone had a gun in the back of their car. And no one thought of shooting anybody. No one thought of that. It was never in anyone's mind that I'm going to get mad and shoot up the school, or I'm going to go to the store and shoot people at the store, which is some things that have happened here in Columbus as of recently. People walking into stores and just shooting people because they're mad at them or because of gang violence or whatever's going on. He said that just wasn't happening. There was a basic respect for life. People support each other even if they didn't like you. It wasn't in their mind, I'm going to go out and kill somebody. And so I really began to contemplate on how we got to this place where life has become so disposable in the minds of many people in our society, in our culture. What has happened? And I prayed about it, I did research, and what I came up with is that there were three things that hold a society together, three basic tenets that keep every society together. Those three tenets are faith, family, and community. Those are the three tenets that keep every society healthy and functioning properly. And what has happened in our society particularly over the last 30 to 40 years, is we have seen a steady breakdown in those three tenets. You have to kind of picture it as a three-legged stool that society sits upon. So you have to imagine this in your mind. And you have, again, faith, family, and community as the legs of this stool. Once you remove one of those legs, the society tips over. It falls over. And what have we seen in our society? We have seen the complete destruction of family. Our communities have broken down, and we have turned our backs on God. It's as clear as day. But mind you, no one in the media is going to talk about it because our media is secular. And so all of the solutions that they're going to present are humanistic in their approach. And by humanistic, I mean that they believe that the solution resides in man, that we have all of the answers. We can fix the problem. But if you notice, the more we try to attempt to fix the problem, the worse it gets. The more we try to intervene, intercede, the more laws we pass, the worse the problem seems to get. And there are reasons for that. So I want to talk to you very briefly. I'm not going to be before you guys long this morning, but I'm going to talk to you very briefly about why each of those tenets is important. Starting off with faith, okay? Faith establishes the moral framework by which society functions. Okay? Faith establishes the moral framework. Faith says, as far as being a believer, because I am a believer, our faith teaches that life is important, that life matters. Hey, cuz, how you doing? That's what our framework teaches. Life matters. Life is important. We value life. So we start with the framework of faith. When we decided to remove that framework from our society, then everything else began to collapse, because faith is the central point in which everything functions. Faith sets the social order, the rules and regulations. Yes, every society has to have rules and regulations for the safety of people, for the proper functioning of people. Every single society has to have that. We live in an age now of moral relativism. Anything goes. Everyone has their own truth, right? So when we hear people talk about, like, what's your truth? What's your truth? Oh, that's his truth. That's her truth. That's their truth. Well, if there's a whole lot of truths, there is no truth. You can't function in a society where everyone believes whatever it is that they want to believe. Because if one person believes that murder is wrong, another person believes that murder is okay. If you're saying that everyone's truth is legitimate, you can't look and say, well, this person is wrong, because they have their own truth. Right? So everyone lives by their own truth. That is a recipe for disaster. Faith promotes sacrifice over selfishness. Sacrifice has become a four-letter word in our culture. But in order for the good of the community, for the community to flourish, people have to sacrifice. They've got to give something up. They've got to give up their own selfish needs and their own selfish desires, because I'm looking out for what's going to be best for the community. Faith is God-centered rather than human-centered. So I recognize there's a higher power, right? That gives me a sense of purpose, a sense of being. We have replaced, listen here, we have replaced God with government. I want you to hear that. We have attempted to replace God with government, and that is not working out at all. We see it in our schools, we see it throughout our government, we see it in our families, and we see it in our communities. We don't need God anymore. We are completely reliant on the government, and I'm going to get to the government last and talk about that. But that's really important, something that we need to understand. The next leg is family. Family. Family is our God-designed support system. That's what family is. Yes, family is your relatives, but it has more to do with the God-designed support system. The job of family is to protect, to provide, and to guide. Protect, provide, and guide. Our families are broken down. Who's protecting our children? Who's providing for them? You know what we've done? Again, we've turned to the government. We've said, okay, we're going to have the government protect our children. We're going to have the government provide for our children. We're going to have the government guide our children. Again, recipe for disaster. Moms and dads are important to the welfare of our children, and to our families, and to our greater society. Statistical facts are that families that are broken, those children are more likely to find themselves in legal trouble, more likely to find themselves in all sorts of deviant behaviors, more likely to find themselves in criminal behaviors, more likely to find themselves in activities that are destructive. So families have broken down. So you don't have a group of individuals who are there, who are supporting one another, who are loving one another. I can tell you, as being a single father, how much more difficult it is to raise your child as a single parent. Let's get real and authentic about it. We need to stop all this junk about drop that zero, get you a hero, you can do it all by yourself and all the other stuff. No, our children need a community around them to grow. They need mothers and fathers. They need male figures who they can look to. They need female figures that they can look to. We've taken that away, and as it continues to deteriorate in every community, this is not even a racial issue at all. We've seen it happen in the black community because we have had the largest numbers of the breakdown in community. And there are historical reasons as to why that has happened, but the fact is we are in the midst of the repercussion, the consequences of those things. We're seeing it in Hispanic communities as their families break down, and we are seeing it in white communities as their communities break down, as their family structures break down. It's very clear. It's very clear evidence. The third area, which is community. Community is a group of individuals who have common interests and goals. Common interests, goals, and values. That's what a community is. We don't talk to our neighbors anymore. How many of you know who your neighbors are? You hardly know who your neighbors are. You go to the store, you don't hardly know who the people at the stores are anymore. I have a bunch of little baby ducks at my feet kind of chilling out right now, and geese, but we don't know who our neighbors are anymore. You go in and out of our doors, in and out of our residences. There's no community, no sense of community. And I'm not talking about going to church, on Sunday, and then you go back to where you are, close the doors, pull the blinds, and never say hello to anyone. I'm talking about this overall. There is no sense of community around us. So our communities have broken down. Our communities are where we fellowship. We fellowship with one another. We spend time with each other. This is your family, someone else's family, or you and someone else, and you're getting together and you're getting to know each other. It helps provide accountability. A lot of these people who find themselves in a situation, a lot of these mass shootings, a common factor that they're finding is many of them come from households where they're broken households, and they're detached. They're not connected to the greater community. I'm not talking about getting together on social media, because this is a barrier. I mean, we talk to one another, but there's a difference. That human connection matters. Hugging someone, holding hands with someone, loving people who are close to you. That's so important, and we have lost all of that. And so there's a consequence to these things. I think the lockdowns contributed to what we're seeing now. We've seen the massive lockdowns where people didn't go out, they didn't communicate with each other. People were afraid to shake hands and hold. I'm gonna tell you what I did. I'm gonna tell you what I did during the lockdowns. I still connected with people. I still got together with people. It was important for my mental health, for my spiritual health, and for my physical health. The moment the gyms were open, I was back in the gym. I was back in the gym because I wanted to work on my physical health, but I also needed to connect with the community that I live in, because I knew that being isolated was not healthy for me, and it's not healthy for anyone. We are designed to connect with one another, and so our communities have broken down. Now, let me say this. Government cannot replace any of these things. The government cannot replace your family. The government cannot replace your community, and the government cannot replace your faith. The job of the government is to protect and enforce the moral and ethical rules and regulations that have been established by the community. That is the job of the government. The government has no soul. The government is amoral. The government doesn't have any morals. They don't have any. The government's job is to enforce the morals that have been established by the society. But if faith is broken down, and the and the community is breaking down, then the government has nothing to function off of but complete secularism, right? So you need to have a healthy community, you need to have strong faith, and you need to have strong families. So the government, we've attempted to try to utilize the government to fill in those gaps, and it hasn't worked. It hasn't. In the 1960s, with the Great Society, the introduction of the Great Society, it was like, okay, we're going to give you money to make up the gap. Money's not making up the gap. We're going to introduce all these social services, and people do need social safety nets, but they cannot replace family. They cannot replace your community. And we have begun to look at the government as being God. And because we've turned our backs on all of those things, we live in an amoral society. We live in a moral relative society. The repercussions are there. The government can only promote and protect what the society, what the community promotes. So my prayer is that as we move forward, that we stop debating all of this other stuff, because again, it doesn't matter how many laws you put into place. We can try to ban every gun in the world, and let me tell you what's going to happen. People are going to still kill each other. People are going to still slaughter one another. People are going to still do irreparable harm to one another. Why? Because it's not about the weapon, it's about the person who's holding the weapon. And if the society is not, if the society is broken down, if we've turned our backs on God, if our families are breaking down, if our communities are not whole, we're going to produce individuals who are going to be deviants. It's just that simple. We are going to produce deviants in our society who have deviant behavior, who are going to commit mass killings, who are going to do destructive things to themselves, in animals, and all of that stuff. You're going to see that because the society as a whole is breaking down. Government can't fill those gaps. So my heart is for us to turn back to the Lord. My heart is that families would be healed, and if the father is not there, get an uncle. Get somebody to stand in it and be a role model to those children, and then our communities will begin to come from inside of their homes with the pole blinds. You're absolutely right, Rosemary. Rosemary put down, yes, that's why God gave morals. It's our foundation of rationalism. Why? Because we are created to be rational beings. The devil is irrational and destroying the society to embrace irrational behavior. Absolutely, Rosemary. That's what I'm saying. We are turning to government to bring the solutions. But government, again, is amoral. They have no morals. It is only, they only can support and protect the morals that the society, that the people in the society promote. And if we don't have any, if we have everybody's truth is the same, you're going to be headed toward destruction. That's where we are. So, praying for each and every one of you. God bless you. Thank you again for joining me today. I will attempt to save this video and share it with your friends and your families. We need to get real and honest about what's happening here and stop all of this foolishness, blaming it on everything else. Oh, it's because there's too many guns. It's because of this thing over there. Do we have a mental illness problem? You better believe we do. But that is the result of the breakdown of our culture. Until we get serious about turning back to God, until we get serious about restoring our families, until we get serious about communities being communities again, we are going to continue to see these events occur around us. God bless each and every one of you. Love you, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you soon. Take care.